Luanne Sieh, welcome. We've heard a lot so far, haven't we, come out of COP about climate financing and indeed in the run up to it. What have you made of what's come out so far?
Yeah, from my vantage point, there are three key things that I've observed, right? The first one is financing is key. I mean, it's the one key enabler, regardless what everyone talk about. Without financing, energy transition or anything to do with climate will not happen because you do need to mobilize the finance from the supply to where it's needed. Second point is that's it. Finance is not everything because finance cannot fund when the product doesn't exist, right? So therefore it requires a lot of technicality, people sitting down, figuring out what project is needed, government to give commitment behind that. That's when after that finance can come in. So finance, banks as a whole should not carry the burden of thinking they need to solve everything. The third point is start now. I think there's a lot of discussion, a lot of need to start now. A lot of people are saying the funds are not reaching them. So just start now, especially for some of the projects that are already clear that it's not economically viable. Just start putting in some money as a catalyst for the rest.
Luanne, what have you made of it so far? What are you excited about what's to come?
So what I'm quite happy to see is more money being committed. So we saw the loss and damage fund, but what we really need is more efficient mobilization of climate finance. So not just the commitment, but how it gets to the projects on the ground. So I really wish for more of that. I'm really happy to see more focus on adaptation. I'm really happy to see a focus on health for the first time at COP, and as well as nature with the Kunming Montreal GBF coming in. So that's great. One of the things I would say that I really wish there'd be more discussion on is that there's a lot of focus on technology. How do we solve the problems of the world through technology? But don't forget, it's technology that got us to the state that we're in. It's burning of fossil fuels and things like that. So what I really wish for is that there'll be more discussion on consumption, on responsible consumption, on lifestyles, things like, cutting out meat from diets. So simple things like that. I don't think there's enough focus on that.
Bringing it back to climate finance, and particularly in your arena in Malaysia, just talk to me about it there and what CIMB is doing in this area.
CIMB is doing a lot in climate finance and sustainability overall. We were the first ASEAN bank to sign up to the Net Zero Banking Alliance. And I'm very pleased to say that we have now committed to net zero targets for sectors that cover half of our financed emissions. So, and recently, we have just announced our targets for power and the palm oil sector. In fact, we are the only bank in the world so far to have set climate targets for the palm sector in line with net zero. So really proud.
How important is sustainability to your future? How key and integral? It's a difficult economic time across the globe, but why is it so important?
Oh, for a bank, there's so many reasons. Of course, it depends on who you're talking to. If you're talking to, people in general, it's about ethics, it's about doing the right thing. If you're talking to the board, it's about risk. If you're talking to the frontliners, it's about opportunities. So, but it is actually all of these things, right? And I echo what CF said. Whatever it is, just start doing it now, and everybody start doing, because if not, then we're going to be in an even worse position in a very short while.
CF, going on from that, where do you see the role and responsibilities of financial institutions in the energy transition?
They are essentially right at the heart of that. I mean, when you talk about transition, right, there is transition and there's just transition, right? Just transition is to make sure no one get left behind in the whole process. And that's where we need the creativity of the financial institution to think of, for example, the white paper that Luanne just talked about in terms of the palm oil. It's easy to say we shouldn't get into palm oil because it destroys land and all those things. But at the same time, there's massive amount of smallholder. Their livelihood is dependent on palm oil. So how do you do that in a creative way whereby you can cushion some of the blow to some of these players, but while at the same time take them towards the end goal, right? So banks can mobilize finances, can educate people around carbon credits, can actually mobilize the governments as well to encourage them to put in the money. On that note, where Luanne and I are from, at least the government is recognizing that climate finance is very important. In the most recent budget, our Prime Minister just announced a sukuk, which is a Islamic bond of up to R1 billion, right, just to get things going as well. And obviously those funds will need to be channeled to the people, and financial institution is the intermediary to do that.
Luanne, your views?
Oh, absolutely critical. So we, as I mentioned, we have announced our targets for the power sector. The power in our power portfolio, we need to get to net zero by 2040 for the power sector, because the power help sector is kind of the source of power to all other sectors. So that's really the linchpin of many things. So many mechanisms to do this. Of course, it is looking at financing green, looking at things like managed phase out. But, in ASEAN, especially, CF talked about the just transition. ASEAN is a little bit special because most of its coal plants, for example, are very, very young. So they've only been in operation for 10 to 20 years, as opposed to in the developed countries where it's 40, 45 years. So to shut down a coal plant early in ASEAN is a lot more expensive. And these guys happen to be the poorest countries, at least much poorer than the developed countries. So the just transition kind of mechanisms really need to come into play.
Luanne Sieh, thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.